So before I start this video, I would like to say that I have played 3 Devil May Cry games before, which would lead some people to believe I shouldn't be using the word virgin in the title. However, when reading the comments for the Doom Virgin video, someone mentioned that even if I had played the 2016 Doom game first in order to lose my DV card, it wouldn't have been considered losing it, which makes sense. In order to lose my V card for a game, I must have played the first game in the series that I am playing. This is because I need to experience the game's first attempt at doing its own style and gaining its own identity. Again, I could have started off with the Doom 2016, but I wouldn't have known its history or how it continued to upgrade itself or downgrade itself as the years went by. So in this episode, it is Devil May Cry's turn to pop my cherry. Now, I have played Devil May Cry 3, 4, and sadly DMZ. And I can't wait and can wait to review them later on down the line. Therefore, I am familiar with the game style and its controls, and I have an idea how the game should be. But since it is the first game, I have lowered my standards as not to be disappointed with it. Okay, hold on. This is a Capcom game that was released in 2001, and when I played it, it felt almost as good as its later releases. I was not expecting this. I was expecting jankiness, poor controls, and very primitive game mechanics. But this game has done something most relationships haven't been able to do, and that is hold up pretty well over the years. When I played this, I was getting the same vibes as I was in the other Devil May Cry games. And now let's talk about the characters. For those who don't know anything about the series and are wanting to get into it, you will be playing as Dante, a half-human, half-demon character who has demonic powers that make him really powerful, and he also owns his own business called Devil May Cry. He hunts down demonic problems for people so long as they know the password and are willing to pay as well. He is a character who comes off as cocky but is not overbearing with his cockiness, which has him placed as a well-balanced character in terms of character balance, which allows him to be loved by almost everyone in the DMC series, but also allows him to be loved by everyone in the DMC fanbase, also allowing new players to quickly get attached to him. Then you are introduced to the next character, Trish. She decides to pay Dante a visit and gets his attention in a very attractive way by hotwiring someone's bike and using it to do property damage at his place of business. Yes, I know destructive women like this do not make for healthy relationships, and no, I am not going to a therapist for it. The brush helps me feel alive, and I will solve my daddy issues my own way. But back to Trish. She talks to Dante, apparently knowing everything about him, knowing that he is the son of Sparta, the demon who turned on his own kind to protect humans and fell in love with a human named Eva. Eva will give birth to 2 sons, Dante and Virgil, both of them twins. And as the years went on, Sparta would die and Eva would be killed by demons. Virgil and Dante would later be separated, and this would lead Dante to believe that Virgil was dead. So Dante started his own business, hoping it would help him get some answers and some revenge. Then Trish decides to do this.
Dark Knight Sparta. Didn't your daddy teach you how to use a sword?
Okay, I will admit that this level of Dami Mommy is a little unhealthy and should be avoided at all costs, but the temptation is still there. But she follows up her attack with this line.
But I'm not your enemy.
Okay. I can't help but smell all the horse shit that is smeared all over those words she just uttered. You literally just knew everything about me and decided to pull this stunt. Dante goes along with her mostly because she looks like his mom, and he is curious about what is going on. So she takes him to a castle, tells him to get inside, and leaves him alone. Doesn't even bother to help him. Okay, breaks my stuff, leaves me alone, confused, and in a unsafe area I'm not familiar with, just like my exes. Let's go ahead and talk about the game's history for a moment. This was originally supposed to be a Resident Evil 4 game, but during the development, it was considered to be too action-packed for the Resident Evil game series. And they decided, hey, why not just turn it into another game instead? All they really did was change up the gameplay and change up the story a bit, and the rest is history. Now, the one thing I noticed that they did was keep the atmosphere similar to the Resident Evil series, and I could feel it throughout my entire playthrough. And I didn't hate it at all for it. In fact, I really enjoyed it. Now, the Resident Evil series has a certain atmosphere about it that has you feeling like something is always around the corner and ready to get you, and has build up in areas for something that can happen. Now, it works in this game because demons can spawn out of nowhere and in groups, with each having their own abilities and weapons. Or you could be going to a door only for it to be blocked by a force field that you either have to find an item for, pay your way through, or kill a certain amount of enemies in order to progress. And when you defeat a boss, that's not the end of the boss. They can appear in different parts of the levels as an obstacle to get away from or just another part of the boss fight itself. So you're always on guard and you need to think quickly when they do appear or else they will wreck your shit. Just like how this giant spider did to me. Bugger off, you piece of trash. Now the game does a good job at letting you get used to the controls and allowing you to figure out what all does what. On the first level you see a door and you can only enter that door after getting enough red orbs. So you start collecting orbs and you see that the level has higher areas that you have to get to, and then you see a blue orb. Now in this moment, you've just learned that the game has fixed camera angles that do follow Dante. However, you do not control the camera at all. You just learned that your character can jump around the environment in order to find things, and that some things can just be out of sight, so exploration can be rewarded if you go exploring for secrets. You have this dark gothic atmosphere, and the levels mostly take place in a castle, which really helps sell the atmosphere. Because you never know how many demons are going to be appearing in a room, and sometimes when returning to areas, the same demons may not even show up again. You'll most likely get other demons that will require a different fighting style in order to take them out. Speaking of which, let's talk about some of the enemies. The most common enemy you'll come across are the marionettes. They are the puppet-looking creatures that come in different varieties, allowing them to be dangerous and distinct amongst a group of them. You have some that have daggers that can be used to attack at close range and can be thrown to attack you from a long distance. Then you have some that use these big bladed things on their hands that hit hard and can block your attacks, allowing them to stay close to you. Then you have a marionette that managed to get its hands on a shotgun and will absolutely pump you full of lead if you get close enough and let your guard down. I'm not going to go into all the enemies, I just wanted to point out these enemies in particular, mostly because they are a good example of how to do a common enemy right. And that is to give them enough variety in order to make them memorable and dangerous for good gameplay. Another thing they did to make some of the common enemies more dangerous is that they gave them the ability to cause damage to you after you've defeated them. This wasn't many, but it was a few. Basically, their bodies will have a little explosive effect that will damage you if you are too close to them, making a near-death experience to the creatures an absolute death experience. And speaking of dangerous, let's talk about the boss battles. The boss battles are where the game decides to let you know that you are playing a difficult game that is not going to let you brute force your way through it. For example, this is Phantom, and if this is your first time playing the game, he will knock you around harder than a drunken stepmom who believes in the power of discipline through steel-toe boots. Yeah, some of y'all complain about flip-flops being thrown at you. Try avoiding steel toes flying at 50 miles an hour. He is a great introduction to the game's difficulty spike that is going to be happening in the game. You're going to need to figure out how the boss functions and find out where their weak points are in order to take them out, and even then, they won't be easy to deal with. The devil trigger makes dealing with things much easier. Now, I've realized I've come this far in the video and I haven't even talked about Dante's abilities or his weapons. Now, you'll be able to upgrade Dante's stats and his moveset as you go through the game, and it is important that you do so in order to increase your survivability and make certain areas of the game much easier. So let's start off with the basics. The Devil Trigger is an ability that allows you to increase your attack power and speed. It also allows you to use certain abilities that correspond with certain items in the game. If you use your sword, you're going to use whatever attacks correspond with your Devil Trigger and your swords. If you use your Ifrit gloves, you're going to use attacks based on that, so on and so forth. And since we're on the subject of the melee items, let's go ahead and get started on those. You start off with Dante's sword, which doesn't have much going for it, but it is from his father. But what he can do with it is pretty good. He can launch a flurry of strikes and can launch enemies in the air, which it can help give yourself some time to collect yourself if your enemies are overpowering you. The Alistair is yet another sword you get, and when you find it, it seems to have taken a liking to Dante. This sword must be a Trish fan. Now, this sword has electrical properties and can give you the ability to double jump once you unlock it, and it is very, very useful during the game and its platforming sections. And also gives you the ability for aerial attacks when in Devil Trigger form. You get the Ifrit gauntlets that are basically flaming metal boxing gloves from hell. These allow you to have flame-based attacks and is great for getting up close and personal with the enemies so you can show off your MMA skills. Very satisfying. This is also good for enemies that use ice-based abilities. And then your final melee weapon is the Sparta, a massive blade that is the sword of Dante's father used when he was around. You will be able to unlock the sword after defeating Nello Angelo, who is a reoccurring boss throughout the game, and turns out to be Virgil, Dante's missing twin brother. This sword is powerful but comes with a few drawbacks. First drawback is while this sword is equipped, you will not be able to activate your Devil Trigger form. Yes, you do see yourself going devil form in the last battle, but it's only for that battle. And second, you will be able to use some of Alistair's abilities, but you will not be able to use all of Alistair's abilities. Now on to the firearms. You will have an infinite amount of ammo, so you'll never have to deal with the worries of running out. You start off with your pistols, Ebony and Ivory. Both are dual-wielded and are mostly used for chip damage since they don't do that much damage. Then you get the shotgun, and oh boy, this thing is lovely, stylish, satisfying, and reliable at close range. If you are being outnumbered and you want to force distance between you and your enemies, this is your go-to weapon. I am very confused by how this thing reloads though. Then there is a grenade launcher that you can use, and man, it hits hard, as a grenade launcher should, and luckily you don't take any damage from its splash radius. To be honest, this thing rarely left my side when I got it, and it's great for crowd control and great for taking out simple enemies quickly if you're in a rush. Then you get the needle gun that can only be used in underwater levels. It gets the job done. Then you get the nightmare gun, which I made the mistake of thinking this was the weakest gun of them all, because I was only getting it to work as a pea shooter. That was until I realized that this gun actually draws from your devil trigger meter. So the more power that you have in your devil trigger, the more powerful the gun is. And man, this thing can be absolutely overpowered if you let it charge enough. But all these weapons, despite being different from each other, play a major part in the game's special draw. And that is how stylized you are in your combat. This is the Devil May Cry series way of encouraging you to take risk and change up your combat tactics in order to get better scores on your combos in order to get higher ranks at the end of the levels, which helps you earn more orbs to use as you please. This has been a main feature of the Devil May Cry games and has been overall loved by the fan base, and for good reasons. As a new player, you see this, you think you're doing alright, and then you realize that the score just keeps going higher and higher, with stylish being the highest score, greatly encouraging new players to increase their skill level with combos and trying different varieties of combinations of the weapons. Then once more experienced in it, the new goal becomes to see how long you can keep that high score going, because it resets after a short period of time, thus encouraging players to keep up the speed and aggression towards the demons for higher ranking scores. Now, as good as this game is, there are some flaws in it. One being the camera placement. In some spots, the camera angles will be working against you and make platforming and combat a little annoying in some parts. Sometimes you'll find yourself going through a doorway only to go back through that doorway due to such a jarring change in the camera angles. Annoying but not game breaking. Another problem you will have is trying to properly stay logged on certain targets. Sometimes you want to go for a certain target, but the game automatically points you towards another target. This can be very annoying, especially if you're trying to keep up your combo. And for some levels, you have to hit these special spots in the walls in order to get certain things to activate. And if you're not touching the wall, the game will automatically think that you're aiming towards the enemy and drive you away from the target on the wall that you're trying to hit. Then you have the swimming levels, which feel out of place in this game, because you switch to first person view and it doesn't feel like a Devil May Cry game anymore. The only two reasons I remember the levels were there because you are given a needle gun that only works on these levels, and when you first go to these levels, the game shows you an entire new control scheme for them. And it is annoying at first to get used to, but it's not game stopping. And from my personal experience, that was the main problems I had with it. Despite being an older game, the graphics are not the best in some areas, but still hold up pretty well. I am playing from the Devil May Cry HD collection, which pretty much just made the graphics look a little bit better in certain areas. Some cutscenes didn't do so well, but it's alright. But I have to say, I think one of the things that helped this game stand out for is also its corniness with some of its lines, and also with how funny Dante's lines can be at times. Here's some examples.
Are you the human, the son of Sparta who challenges the darkness for this?
Block off, Featherface, or you can stick around and find out the hard way. Well, well, what do we have here? Nature calls? It's in the back. I should have saved you. I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light.
Now the game is short with 6 hours of playtime if you just want to rush through, but offers replayability with harder levels to select when you unlock them after beating the game for the first time, and offers secret missions that you have to find in the game as well. And you can also try your hand at the speedrunning, seeing if that's what you're into. That's all I have to say for this game. I greatly enjoyed it. I recommend you pick it up, and you have a good day.